From the heartland of America, focused on God, family, and country, the mouthpiece of the Midwest. This is Dale Carter's America.
We're back on the podcast with all kinds of fun stuff to talk about and a fun event to tell you about as well. I'm Dale Carter. He's Kurt Wheeler. And he, at this point, is going to tell you all the ways that you can be part of the fun here at Dale Carter's America.
Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday when you're watching this. Thanks for checking out the podcast. You can find us on YouTube and Spotify, YouTube and Rumble for the video version. That's the best way to watch it. We have plenty of clips. Plus, you get to see our beautiful faces, of course. Make sure that you're subscribed. Hit the like button, leave a comment. It really helps the algorithm on YouTube, especially because, it's hard for conservative content to get boosted on YouTube. Make sure that you're following us on Facebook. Leave a comment on some of our posts. We've been having great engagement, so we really appreciate that. And then you can get the audio-only podcast also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And tell your friends. We appreciate you watching and listening. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm in uniform today wearing my Dale Carter's America t-shirt that Tammy Ash did for me. And we have that pinned at the top of our Facebook page. If you want to get some cool logo wear, Tammy will fire that up for you. We have coffee mugs, t-shirts, and all that. And you might want to wear it because we got a big event coming up. We want to say thanks to Bob Watson for sponsoring the podcast. Note to self here, we got to invite all the sponsors to the big event coming up on June 25th. I'll tell you about that in a second. Blue Springs local State Farm agent for 5 decades, Bob Watson, 50 years in the insurance business for State Farm. He's insured a lot of folks, insured my family for nearly 30 years. Auto, home, life, and you can bundle and save with State Farm. Car and homeowners insurance bundled together save big bucks at a time of inflation where you want to save everywhere you can. Bobby is licensed in both Missouri and Kansas. You can reach him on the phone at 816-229-7878. His office is at 7th and Main in Blue Springs, but don't let that hold you back. If you're outside of Blue Springs, he could still be your State Farm agent. Call Bob Watson. Now, let's tell you about this big event coming up. It's June 25th. We teased it last weekend. We finally put it together. Conservative senator, you talk about conservatives, Senator Bill Eigel, running for governor of Missouri, is going to be with us at Funhouse Pizza in Lee's Summit. Now, that's the one on 50 Highway in Lee's Summit. They're also on 7 Highway in Blue Springs, but you definitely want to be there. I got the chance at the Lincoln Days event in Kansas City to host a forum with 4 candidates running for the Republican nomination, and I got to tell you, Kurt, this guy was the most impressive, I thought, especially where we're coming from as conservatives. And I like Mike Parson. On a personal level, I like him. I respect that he came out of being a sheriff. He came out of law enforcement. But do you know much about Mike Parson?
No. I met him once, very briefly. Nice guy, but I don't really know much about him.
He's just kind of like an aw shucks, can't we all get along kind of a guy.
Yeah.
And he was lieutenant governor for Eric Greitens, and Eric Greitens was more of a let's smash some eggs and make an omelet here and get Missouri on a more conservative track because we are allegedly a red state. Went for Donald Trump both times.
I actually met Greitens, not Parsons. I remembered that wrong.
Well, Greitens is the guy who had to resign because of the sex scandal and all that.
Right.
And then we got Mike Parson. And again, Mike's a good guy. He's just kind of an aw shucks, can't we all just kind of get along? And what I heard out of the 4 candidates was this guy that you're looking at, Senator Bill Eigel. He's the guy who looks at Iowa, looks at Arkansas, and says, look at all the things that they are doing right. Why can't we be more like them? Mm-hmm. I mean, when you're comparing Missouri to Arkansas and Iowa, are you kidding me? But they're running laps around us in terms of conservatism. So we invited Senator Eigel to be at our event on June 25th at 6 p.m. at Funhouse Pizza. I invite all of you to come as well. Bring your questions for the senator and listen to what he has to say about his tax plan and what he would do differently than what's going on right now. You got a couple of other guys running. The current lieutenant governor, I think he's running because he thinks he has to, right? Because he fell into being lieutenant governor, and now what do you do if you're lieutenant governor? You run for governor.
Yeah.
You got another guy whose dad was governor and was attorney general under Donald Trump. So, of course, he's going to run. But this guy doesn't come from that kind of background. He comes from a military background, and I just like him. and I want you to hear what he has to say. We'll ask him questions about where he would take the state of Missouri, and then with your questions, I think we're going to have a great event at Funhouse Pizza, 50 Highway in Lee's Summit. Jim Dingman won't be there. He's traveling, but he said his staff will take excellent care of us, and I know that they will. You know why? Because Funhouse Pizza is a fun place to be. It's why we go there to do the live events on the podcast, and we think this is going to be a big one, so the bigger venue is the Lee's Summit location, so make sure that you join us there. Really, anytime that you want to have a big event with your family, with your team, Funhouse Pizza is the place to be. Birthday parties for your kids. They've got rides the kids love to play on. They've got video games for the older kids who want to play that. And the food is amazing. Piled high pizza, cold beverages, and just a fun atmosphere. That's why they call it Funhouse Pizza. But definitely circle this on your calendar. We'll start promoting it as well. June 25th at 6 p.m. That's going to be a crazy week, Kurt, because you got our event on Tuesday night. And then Thursday night, you got the first debate between, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. You'll definitely want to pop some popcorn for that. Before we get into all of that, let's again thank a couple of our sponsors, Royal Roofing and Solar. Mike Dale is the solar guy, and every day it seems like when I pull up his page on Facebook, he's posting something with a bill from Evergy that has a credit on it. Can you imagine that? As we go into summer with air conditioning costs and all that, that people who have gone solar with Solar by Royal are getting credit bills from Evergy. You want to find out more about that? Call Royal Roofing and Solar, 816-540-7057, solarbyroyal.com, and royalcontractingkc.com. They did the roof on my house. I don't plan on keeping my house that long, and Mike Dale can talk to you about the cost benefit, because there's a cost involved in getting solar, but if it's your forever home and you can start getting credit bills from Evergy, I think that's the way to go. Have that conversation with him. And maybe with all the storms we've had, you got some hail damage anyway. Maybe it's time for a new roof. Maybe they can bundle it all together for you and save money in the process. 816-540-7057. Here's another sobering stat. 10,000 people a day turn 65 in this country, and most don't know anything about Medicare. They just know, hey, at 65, I get Medicare. What does that mean? Well, if you're approaching 65 or you've got a friend or relative who is, get with Kirk Doris and Lori Hocker at Medicare Simplified KC. They make Medicare understandable and simple. Over the last decade, they've helped thousands of folks right here in the Kansas City area understand what Medicare is and how it applies to them. Medicare is not a one-size-fits-all. You really need to get the answers and know your options. These folks are pros at it. They're at 3600 South Nolan Road in Independence, on the phone at 816-701-6661. You can find them on the web at MedicareSimplifiedKC.com. Well, the first debate is set for June 27th. It's going to be interesting to see, isn't it? My advice to Donald Trump, as we said on another podcast episode, is don't let him rope-a-dope you, right? Because what he wants the country to see is this poor old man and this mean old bully who's just, bludgeoning him. I would, if I were Donald Trump, I'd say, I'd give my 2 minutes to Joe Biden. Talk.
Yep.
Good luck to you.
Yeah, it's great advice. It's great advice. And we've seen, we'll get to later, we've seen Biden continuing to deteriorate. And I don't know what kind of tricks they're going to try and pull. I mean, they've already said that there's going to be no audience. The Biden team, demanded that there be no audience. They also apparently are going to have the microphones turned off for the responses so that they can't interrupt each other.
That might help Trump.
It could, yeah. But, I mean, it also prevents Trump from getting those kind of one-liners that he did so well with in 2016. Only Rosie O'Donnell, because you'd be in jail. We all remember these moments from the debates that were so fantastic. So he won't be able to do that. But we'll see, what drugs they have Biden popped up on. Maybe he'll have an earpiece, maybe they'll bring in the Biden clone, if you really want to get conspiratorial. We'll see.
Well, they let him have a notebook because that's how he's doing it now. At press conferences, he's reading like as best he can from a notebook.
Right.
And now, the Wall Street Journal comes with a story, And the left, is their hair's on fire constantly over something. Their hair's on fire that he was heading over to D-Day, the 80th anniversary, and that's when the Wall Street Journal dropped the story. They say they interviewed Republicans and Democrats. And guess what the takeaway is? The takeaway is he's really old.
Yeah.
And we've been saying that for the 3.5 years we've been doing this, that today's version of Joe Biden is the best version of Joe Biden you're going to get.
Yeah.
Going downhill quickly.
The funny thing about this headline to me is behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping. It's like behind closed doors.
Well,
how about like on camera?
What the administration has been trying to peddle out there is that behind the scenes, man, the young people in the White House can't keep up with him. He's like a dynamo. It's just what you see publicly that where he's slipping a little bit. That's why they say that.
Yeah.
Even behind the scenes, he's like falling asleep in meetings. He's mumbling through stuff. And this isn't just what we perceive. What do you think world leaders perceive? What do you think our enemies perceive?
Yeah.
What do you think China thinks and Putin, and the Iranians and the North Koreans? What are they thinking about this?
And again, it's all on camera too. I mean, you can see, we'll get to later with the D-Day thing again, but he's had these moments with other world leaders where he's clearly out of it, or he's walking the wrong direction. He has to be shown where to go. He doesn't know who to talk to. He's being babied essentially, and it's in front of world leaders. So it's not behind closed doors. We see it every day, and to pretend that that's not happening is just, it's willful ignorance at best, and it's just complete, blindness, I guess.
Well, the propaganda wing of the left, one of them anyway, is the New York Times. And over the weekend, this is after I put the notes in for you, but the New York Times basically had a piece that is starting to fact check Biden. But the way they fact check it, because they're in the bag for Joe Biden, it's like, yeah, he embellishes stories. Maybe the Uncle Bosie getting eaten by the cannibals isn't a true thing. I don't know. But, up against Donald Trump, who's a serial liar, and every time he opens his mouth, nothing comes out of it but lie, lie, lie. And then the only thing they cite is he denied that he lost in 2020. Well, if that's the biggest sin that the New York Times can pin on Donald Trump, they better pin it on Hillary Clinton, because in 2016 she denied that she lost.
Yeah.
She still denies that she lost. She said, "Boy, you can get more votes than the other guy," and the other guy still finds a way to win.
And it can still be stolen. Those were her exact
still be
words.
stolen. Exactly.
We've played the clip many times.
Yeah.
But there's also this story from CNN trying to play cover after the Wall Street Journal story came out. The Wall Street Journal story about Biden's mental acuity suffers from glaring problems. So they go through basically, and they're saying that there was a disproportionate number of Republicans that were surveyed. So of course that means that the whole thing has to be thrown out, right? But you can go in and read that if you'd like, because it's just funny. It's funny to see these people try and play cover. They're ignoring the glaring problems that we see every day, like I said, and they're trying to find these other things that they can point to. Oh, they surveyed Republicans. Oh, Trump's bad. Orange man bad. And they don't want you paying attention to what's actually happening with this guy.
Yeah. Well, they say when you're explaining, you're losing, but I'm still going to explain the fact of what Donald Trump said about what happened in 2020. Because again, because of COVID, they went in and they said, okay, we got to change all the rules for elections. We got to start throwing ballots in every direction because of COVID. And amazing, it happened in the battleground states. And then, of course, with the audacity that they have, they did such a great job. Joe Biden got more votes than anyone in the history of this republic, that they tried to codify those into law. Well, here's the problem. They did it outside of the legislative process in those states. That's important. That matters, because elections are determined by state law, and state law is written by state legislatures, not the courts. And they tried to backdoor it in those states, and then it worked so well for them, they tried to codify it into law, and they failed in every state they tried to do it in. So we're going to do the 2024 election the old-fashioned way. You won't get to claim COVID rules. So we'll see how it works out at that point.
Well, I mean, we'll see, because they have codified a lot of those rules. Mail-in ballots is a big thing now. I mean, that's not going away unless we do something to remove it. It's maybe won't happen to the same level that it did in 2020, but it's still happening.
Yeah.
There's still mail-in ballots. There's still absentee ballots. There's still all these issues. And the changing of the rules wasn't the only thing that happened in 2020. There was all the ballots that came in the middle of the night. There was people who are dead voting, people who voted twice, all of these issues to the tune of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of votes in these battleground states. And we've gone through the breakdown from each state of all these inconsistencies that has been put out as all public information. We've gone over it. And, you know, you look back to like 2000, the Bush-Gore election in 2000, you know, came down to the wire. They had a big court case because of one county in Florida, which was like, what, 5,000 votes, 4,000 votes, something like that?
Small number, yeah.
In one county. We have way more than that, you know, so my thing now is like when Trump talks about 2020, he's just right. I mean, I don't think we need to give any caveats to that whatsoever. He's correct in his assessment of that, and he has the right to feel, you know, to feel that he got that taken away from him because he did.
Yeah. Of course, now they got their hair on fire saying that if he wins this time, there will never be another election in this country. He will never leave, blah, 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 blah. Well, that flies in the face of what actually happened when he lost to Joe Biden. So we'll see how Biden-Trump 2.0 comes down. I mean, let's go back to D-Day. D-Day plus 80. You know, on the 40th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, the great Ronald Reagan gave a speech. And I played a clip of that on my morning show on KFKF because Ronald Reagan could make a speech. And you know, Ronald Reagan then was getting ready to run for re-election. He was a lot younger than Joe Biden is right now. And they said he was old. But he nailed that speech. So on the 80th anniversary, what we're left with is Joe Biden, who is 81, going to be 82 in November, and is getting feebler by the day. And do we have some, what do you want to do first here?
Yeah, this is a clip, just kind of a supercut of all the different moments from the day that went viral.
I mean, watch how he's walking. And one of the things, I don't know if you have the clip of him walking, but there's something going on with his right hand where it like sticks out. The thumb is at an awkward angle, and you know that's going on. There's something going on with that, and then like you said, he doesn't know where he's going, doesn't know when to sit, doesn't know what. He just looks lost.
100%. Let's check it out.
All right, check the front, make sure I didn't pee myself. Yeah. All right, pick him dry. See how he holds his right hand?
Yeah.
Very awkward.
Do I go here?
Who am I saluting?
This is the one that went really viral. People are saying he crapped his pants. I don't know, but he does something weird here.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin.
Well, he was going to sit down.
And then they exit early.
I mean, it looks like a cadaver walking, right?
And then Macron is left behind to...
Where'd Joe go?
Yeah. I feel like Macron has to like compensate for Biden. He's like running around. He's, you know, he has to show off how youthful he is.
There was a picture of the four of them, the two presidents and their wives, walking across like a stage together, like four wide, and that looked really bad too.
Yeah,
I mean, it just, you know, you can't say it enough. I mean, again, what we got at D-Day was the best version of Joe Biden you're going to get.
Yep.
Moving forward, it's going to continue to slide. Now, the speech itself, now where Reagan on the 40th anniversary had glowing terms about the bravery of the men who stormed the beaches, it was all about them. It wasn't about anything else. Joe Biden decided to turn it into Ukraine and casting Russia as that evil Hitler type and Ukraine as the victim. Now, I'm not as offended by that as a lot of people are, and I'll tell you why after you play the clip.
Isolationism was not the answer 80 years ago and is not the answer today. We know the dark forces that these heroes fought against 80 years ago. They never fade. Aggression and greed, the desire to dominate and control, to change borders by force, these are perennial. Here in Europe, we see one stark example. Ukraine has been invaded by a tyrant bent on domination. Ukrainians are fighting with extraordinary courage, the United States and NATO, and a coalition of more than 50 countries standing strong with Ukraine. We will not walk away, because if we do, Ukraine will be subjugated, and it will not end there. Ukraine's neighbors will be threatened. All of Europe will be threatened. And make no mistake, the autocrats of the world are watching closely to see what happens in Ukraine. Let me end with this. History tells us freedom is not free. If you want to know the price of freedom, come here to Normandy. Come to Normandy and look. We cannot let what happened here be lost in the silence of the years to come. We must remember it, must honor it, and live it. And we must remember the fact that they were heroes here that day does not absolve us from what we have to do today. Democracy is never guaranteed. Every generation must preserve it, defend it, and fight for it.
Yeah, you get
All
the
right.
idea.
So, he's going to talk about that. And, I'd have been okay with it if he'd have mentioned the greatest genocide that happened in the 20th century happened right on the doorstep there. Those men went over that beach to defeat Nazi Germany. And the genocide, the biggest genocide of the 20th century, was felt by the Jews. No mention of what happened in Israel. No mention at all. Hamas attacks Israel on October 7th, and Joe Biden has been on Bibi Netanyahu ever since to wrap this thing up. In fact, in Time magazine, Joe Biden says that Netanyahu is doing this, prosecuting this war for political purposes. Really? They were attacked by terrorists who hide behind women and children. And now, the White House, Hamas gives back, or they find a few of the hostages alive, and right away the administration is like, wrap this thing up. Let's get a peace deal going here. You talk about politics and projection, which we talk about a lot on the podcast. The people playing politics with this are in the White House. They want this thing wrapped up because every day that it goes on, it's just another reminder of Joe Biden getting into bed with Iran backdooring money to Hamas. Hamas attacks Israel, and Israel says, you know what? We're tired of this bullshit. We're going to fight back. And they're fighting back. And they're doing what they have to do to secure Israel against terrorists who hide behind women and children. And he can't even mention that in the speech, basically marking the beginning of the end of World War II, which we fought to end Nazi aggression.
You know what I was thinking? This has nothing to do with that, but you have like the whatever remaining World War II veterans that there are, right? They're all like 100 years old plus, which makes Joe Biden like a young man by comparison. That's the only crowd that he could possibly be in where he's like a young man. They're coming up to him like, look at you, young man. Yeah.
And you know what? And a bunch of them they looked pretty spry for 100 years old.
They're probably in better shape than he is.
Meanwhile, he walks off the stage like a cadaver because that's essentially what he is. Age is a number. You hear that a lot, right? And there are 81-year-olds out there who are very spry. My mother's 80, and she's very intelligent. She can carry on a conversation with you, and I think she will for some time to come. Joe Biden hasn't been able to carry on a conversation for how long?
Yeah.
And he still can't.
And it's getting worse.
All right. So the day he came into office was when we started this podcast, right, on Inauguration Day. And trust me on this, I don't know how Kurt feels about this, but I don't get up every day and think, what has Joe Biden done that I can rant about today? I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's the president of the United States. I'd like for him at some point to do something, and my response is, yeah, okay, I get that. That makes a lot of sense. I don't feel that way ever.
Yeah.
We wake up and he's done something like, you know what? The border's a problem 3.5 years later. And he puts out this executive order, right? And the executive order, basically, when you read it, I know it looks good on the headline. I know there are a lot of stupid people out there that don't go beyond the headlines. And I know it looks good on a headline that he does an executive order, it's going to fix the border. Well, that executive order, if you read the fine print, basically allows another 1 million people to come into the country. How does that help?
Well, it helps him, and it's classic Democrat misdirection. They did the same thing with the border bill that they brought to Congress,
right?
Which is genius on their part. I mean, you have to hand it to them. They're really good at spinning the narrative exactly how they want it to. They brought a border bill that just basically enshrines into law that the border will be open and X number of people will be allowed to come in illegally, which is unacceptable. And the Republicans and Donald Trump, who's obviously not in office, but he has a microphone and a Truth Social and everything like that, a lot of influence, opposed it for that reason. It's a terrible bill. So now they can turn around and say, well, we tried to secure the border, but Donald Trump wouldn't let, now they're trying to reframe it as if they're the ones who are strong on the border.
Well, here's another...
And Republicans are the one who are weak on the border.
Here's another inconvenient truth. He had both houses of Congress for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
They didn't do shit about the border. He made it worse. Go back to the 2020 campaign where he was on stage with other Democrats, and he basically said, come on in. The water's fine. We'd love to have you here. Right. He said that on a stage with other Democrats. And so guess what happened when he became president? First of all, he rescinded every executive order that Donald Trump put out. And then a bunch of folks wearing Biden-Harris shirts showed up at the border and said, hey, we're going to take you up on this. And then he didn't do anything about it until the polls showed that it was a problem. It became an issue that voters cared about. And then it's like, well, we got to get something done here. And then, some Republicans came on board. Then the Democrats added a whole bunch of stuff that nobody wanted. It failed. And now he's blaming Donald Trump and the Republicans. He puts out this weak executive order that won't fix anything. We'll make it worse.
We have a clip of Governor Abbott on with Maria Bartiromo on Fox News. He kind of talks about this.
Since the Biden administration unwound President Trump's border security. The governor joins me now with the latest on Biden's border order. Governor, great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Maria.
Can you give us an update? Have you seen any change at the border since Joe Biden came out with an executive order?
None whatsoever. Listen, people need to understand that what Biden has done, he's not doing anything to actually secure the border. In fact, it's the opposite because he's actually authorizing more people to cross the border illegally. And think about this. When you get to that 2,500 number of people crossing the border a day that he says he will allow, but only then stop the asylum process. When he stops the asylum process, there's nothing that Biden is doing that actually is preventing anybody else from crossing the border. There's no type of enforcement mechanism in place. And so as long as the Biden administration refuses to provide any type of enforcement, any type of blockage of people crossing illegally, all that this new Biden policy is going to do is to actually attract and invite even more people to cross the border illegally. And you've seen on videos ever since the Biden order went into place, there's no slowing down of people crossing the border. In fact, it's just accelerating. And so this is gaslighting our fellow Americans when Biden gets up and says this is going to stop people from coming across the border, when he says it's going to secure the border. In fact, it is making the border illegal crossings worse.
I think he nailed it there where he said it's gaslighting. It's gaslighting and it's election repositioning. They know
it is.
That this is a terrible issue for them. They can look at the polling and see that the vast majority of Americans want the border to be secured, want illegals to be, either deported or at least, sent back to their country at the border. And so they see that polling and they see that this is a terrible issue for them. So they're just trying to, it's smoke and mirrors. They're just trying to put something out and reframe the narrative going into the election. That's what this is all about.
Well, if it looks like Trump's going to win, look for a lot more people to try and get in the country, because when Donald Trump comes in, those executive orders are going to come back. It's going to be remain in Mexico. It's going to be catch and send back. Mass deportations are going to happen of illegals who are here wreaking havoc in this country. You can't go a day without seeing something where an illegal did something, to cause mayhem. This is where they take me out of context here. I'm not saying that all people who come here, even illegally trying to find a better life, aren't necessarily bad people, but some of them are, and none of them should be here. The tolerance level for illegal immigration should be zero.
Right. I mean, you're breaking the law, whether you're a good person or not.
Right.
Is kind of besides the point. Obviously, we don't wish ill will on anybody, and and we want people to succeed. We want people to be healthy and thrive in their own countries.
If we had a stronger border, Laken Riley would be alive today.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
And many others.
You got to think about it in terms like that. The border weakness was on purpose, perpetrated by the Biden administration on day one. And the fact that he's trying to, as you say, reframe the narrative, it's audacious, but it's what they do. You need to see through it, and you need to spread the word to people who might be on the fence. And another place that they try and reframe the narrative without looking into the details. Details are a funny thing. The new jobs report came out. Looked great on the surface. Better than expected. 220,000 jobs created in May. Yet, here's another fact out of that. Unemployment ticked up to 4%. Now, how does that happen? How do we add more jobs than were expected, and yet unemployment goes up as well?
Well, I think it's the same. I haven't really looked into this, but I would imagine it's the same trend that has been happening for several years now, which is that people are working multiple jobs.
Bingo.
So they count it as jobs created because inflation is so high and because the cost of living is going up, because housing prices are going up, utility prices are going up. I mean, we talk about it all the time here in Kansas City with Evergy, for example. And even though Kansas City is relatively low cost of living compared to a lot of other places in the country, you look at housing prices and they're skyrocketing. Rent costs are going up. The costs of automobiles are going up. So people are having to work more than one job, and they count that as a new job. I've asked before, does part-time count? If it
does count in that number.
Right, because we mentioned this before, and I'll say it again. If each part-time job or each 1099 that you are paid for counts as a new job, then I'm taking up like 5 or 6 jobs. I mean, I get a lot of 1099s. I'm doing a lot of different things. So am I creating new jobs for the economy? Is that how you want to frame it? Or do you want to frame it as, well, things are more expensive, I'm a sole breadwinner for my family, I'm trying to provide for my family, and I have to work as much as I possibly can because of how expensive everything is?
Well, and I'll say this, whether there's a Republican or a Democrat there, the government is not creating jobs. They don't create jobs. Well, they do create jobs because government jobs, I mean, if you look town to town, Kansas City, one of the highest employers we have is the federal government. But if you're talking about in the private economy, the private sector, the only thing that the government can do, the federal government in particular, is make it harder to create jobs. And I would argue that Joe Biden and his administration have made it harder to create jobs. It's been tougher on the private economy.
And what am I doing here?
Well, we know what he's doing, and we report on it weekly on Dale Carter's America. 145 days, by the way, until decision 2024. Now, one of the things that might have changed some of those votes in the middle in the 2020 election was the Hunter laptop. Do you remember when the laptop story came out? The New York Post broke the story, and it was Russian disinformation. How many intelligence people in the intelligence community signed that letter that said this has all the markings of Russian interference, a Russian hoax? Well, it turns out it was true. We knew it was true. How do we know it's true now? Because Hunter Biden is on trial for some gun charge in Delaware where he checked the box on the form saying that he wasn't a drug user when in fact he was a drug user. And that's what started, that's the tip of the iceberg on this trial going on. But what came into evidence last week was the FBI admitted that the laptop does exist. So it's the first time we've had it on the record. We know that it exists, but the first time we've had it on the record in a trial that it does exist. But it was certified as a hoax, right?
So you mean that all those videos of him weighing out crack rocks on his scale and holding up his gun and banging prostitutes, those were not fake? Those were real?
Apparently that was true. And there are people who said and my interest in this, and I've said this before on the Facebook page, I think I've said it on the podcast, I could care less what Hunter Biden did. If he broke the law, he should, be in trial, which he is right now, and he may well go to jail for what he did. What I care about is how does it relate to the big guy?
Right.
All right. Are there things on that laptop that expose, funny dealings with some of our enemies like China? There were deals with Ukraine. What's going on there? And does it relate back to Joe Biden? Is he corrupt? That's what I care about. And it tells me that there may be something there if they were so quick to try and make it a Russian hoax.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, they did a very good job of disassociating the Biden campaign from that due to the election interference of taking down the story off of the New York Post and various social media platforms, which has been proven that it was collusion between these social media companies and the Biden campaign in order to make that happen, which has never been addressed, of course. But here's a clip from Newsmax. One thing that they included in here that's relevant, which you kind of already mentioned, is the quote unquote 50 or whatever
intelligence folks,
intelligence officials, whatever that means, that signed the letter. And then there's also a clip from the debate that we can play.
Take the Hunter Biden laptop, for example. The deep state lied to us. The so-called 51 former intel officials all saying it was Russian disinformation. But it wasn't just them doing the lying. Sleepy Joe lied too. Watch.
Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
Nobody.
President Trump, I want to stay on the...
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
His good friend Rudy.
Isn't it interesting? We live in
fake news.
Yeah, we live in this wonderful era where what you say can come back and bite you on the ass.
Yeah,
so you really need to think about that.
We have social media. Isn't that fantastic?
And Joe was able to put words together a little more clearly than he can now, and he still couldn't say Giuliani.
Yeah, come on.
All right, what was the number again? 145 days until decision 2024, a chance to correct what has happened here in this country. Midwest GI, those folks, Midwest GI Health and Wellness, Dr. Mark Taramina and his staff there, who remind you that 45 is the new 50. Get your colonoscopy today. One of the things that they help us with are the Full of Shit Awards. And we have not one, not two, we have 3 Full of Shit Awards today.
Let's play the bumper.
You're full of shit.
All right, thank you.
Now, shush.
You are speaking shit to me.
You full of shit. You understand that? You full of shit.
And you won't be after you have your colonoscopy, because it all gets cleaned out. You'll be clean as a whistle as you were as a newborn. That's probably not true either, because newborns put out a lot, don't they, Kurt?
Oh, yeah. I have firsthand experience with that.
Yeah. So back to this, though. Get your colonoscopy. If you're 45 or older, we can prevent colon cancer from killing you. Isn't that worth getting your colonoscopy? Get screened. You don't need a doctor to help you with this. You can go right to the source, and that's Dr. Mark Taramina and his staff at Midwest GI Health and Wellness. 4.9 out of 5 stars is their Google rating, and you can call them and make an appointment today. Do it for somebody you love who's 45 or older and has not had that first colonoscopy yet. 816-836-2200. They're on the web at MidwestGIHealth.com. Do this. It could well save your life. All right, well, let's start with, there's several awards we have to give out today. We're going to start with Fauci's testimony on Capitol Hill. I mean, this guy has no shame. What he put the country through, he can't walk any of it back. And, I have my own experience with this. I'm not going to out him, but my doctor at the time told me that basically if you came in and you had COVID symptoms and you died of something else, you were to be labeled a COVID death to get money from the federal government. That's just one area they lied in. Other stuff they just completely made up. And when I saw his testimony on Capitol Hill, the one that stuck out to me that you won't see anywhere in the liberal or mainstream media is Congressman Rich McCormick. Congressman McCormick is a doctor who treated COVID patients. Nobody at Anthony Fauci's level or anybody in that Washington, D.C. Area that dealt with all of this, none of them treated actual COVID patients. Listen to him. He took his entire 5 minutes where, the congressmen, they go in a round, rounds of 5 minutes. They get to question whoever the witness is. And McCormick, I thought, just destroyed him.
Yeah. I had the full 5-minute clip. The clip is no longer available from a suspended account, apparently, but I found this. This is 2.5 minutes.
So. Okay, it'll be good enough.
You said in an interview that you gave as part of an audiobook written by Michael Spector that you believed an institutional should make it hard for people to live their lives so they'd feel pressured to get vaccinated. Could we run the audio clip on that, please?
You think can be done about it? I have to say that I don't see a big solution other than some sort of mandatory vaccination. I know federal officials don't like to use that term.
Once people feel empowered and protected legally, you are going to have schools, universities, and colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. Lady, you're going to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Big corporations like Amazon and Facebook and all of those others are going to say, you want to work for us, you get vaccinated. And it's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit and they get vaccinated.
Thank you. Are all objections to COVID vaccinations ideological bullshit, Dr. Fauci?
No, they're not, and
Thank
that's
you.
not what I was referring to.
Well, in reference to making it hard for people to get education, traveling, working, I'd say it very much was in context. And I take great offense to this. Miss Allison Williams testified before this committee about losing her job because she sought an exemption for ESPN's vaccine mandate, which came from recommendations from bureaucrats like yourself. She and her husband were actively working with a fertility expert, a physician, on how to get pregnant, and agreed with the premise that she was young, healthy, wanted to get pregnant, and shouldn't get the vaccination for medical purposes. But she was fired because you made it hard, just like you said in your statement, because you didn't want to make sure that the ideological bullshit got in the way of her working, of living her life, of making a medical decision with her healthcare professional. I think America should take great offense to this. That's exactly what you meant when you said making it hard for people to live without getting a vaccination. You affected people's ability to work, travel, be educated, to actually flourish in American society, to self-determine, as we're all given God-given rights.
And again, this guy's a doctor who treated COVID patients during COVID. And there were other parts of his 5 minutes that he went through where he asked Fauci, did you treat any patients for COVID? And Fauci had to admit that no, he didn't. And Fauci really doesn't have any shame, right? He's just, I did all this. Fine, deal with it. There are people I know, people that you know, Kurt, who lost their job because they refused. They took a stand. And there were people like me who felt pressured. You know, you talk about all the different jobs you have. I'm not going to name it, but one of the jobs I have made it pretty darn clear to me that if I wanted to continue in that role, I'd have to be vaccinated. So I got the 2 vaccines and I got 1 booster. After that, I'm completely done with it. Now, all I can speak for is myself, but I came down with a condition called PMR, polymyalgic rheumatica, which is something that affects people way older than me. I don't have comorbidity. I've got my weight under control. I don't smoke. I don't excessively drink. This should not have happened to me. Yet it did. It came out of left field. At my last physical, my doctor told me I'm in perfect health other than PMR. And he said, you couldn't have done anything about that anyway. And I said, well, the only thing that I can point to that I've done differently is I had those COVID shots. And he said, you know what? We don't know. We can't rule that out. We're not going to know what those COVID shots did until we get way down the road. So did that cause it? I don't know. But what it's done to my health, because I had PMR, and the way that you treat PMR, if you've ever had that, you treat it with prednisone, a steroid. And it's a reducing level of steroids over the course of a year to 2 years. And I've already had 1 relapse in it. And what that's done is it's reduced my immunity, and it's compromised my bone structure. So with decreased immunity, I had a skin infection that put me in the hospital for 4 days and damn near killed me because it was almost septic by the time that stubborn me let people take me to the hospital for all the symptoms that were firing up. And it compromised my bone structure. I broke a bone in my back and can't tell you how it happened, other than perhaps it's a compression fracture. And all of it ties back to PMR, and PMR may have come to me because I took those COVID shots. Maybe not. I don't know. We won't know, right? There's a lot of mystery about it.
No, we won't know. We won't know for a very long time. I mean, we talked about a story, this is a long time ago, but it's going to take like 75 years for all the data to come out because that's how long it takes them to go through it, apparently. But, that we've seen an increase in heart conditions, heart attacks, and other heart failures of very young and healthy people. We're not allowed to look at that. We're not allowed to look at any correlation that the shots may or may not have. It's not clear that they do, but we have to be able to look into that, and we're simply not. And, recently, too, we have again known this for a while, but there was I don't remember exactly what it was. It was a study or a court case or something that they ruled that the COVID-19 shot is not actually a vaccine because it doesn't prevent you from getting it. It doesn't prevent you from spreading it. And it's not made in the traditional way that a vaccine is made. Normally, a vaccine, you get a small dosage of whatever the thing is that builds up your body's natural immunity. That's what constitutes a vaccine. These are mRNA shots, which are something else completely. They're not a vaccine, but they all call it a vaccine. Dr. Fauci calls it a vaccine. It's not a vaccine. So there's lots of problems, and it's made a lot of money for these people, and it gave them a lot of power. So that's very concerning. What's going to happen the next time?
All right. Well, we're in the Full of Shit Awards, but we're going to take a little bit of a detour and give out a Joseph Goebbels Award. We've never given out that award before. I'm big on projection, and whenever I hear people on the left calling us Nazis, I wonder what they're really doing. And I think if there are Nazis out there, they're on the left because they spread propaganda, right? And they tried to have like a truth board, right? That's right out of the Joseph Goebbels playbook. He would be so proud. You should crack a book here. Read a little bit of history. But the Joseph Goebbels Award on this episode goes to Maryland's Kwesi Mfume for again spreading the lie that Trump told people to inject themselves with bleach during COVID.
I'm going to play a slightly longer clip here just because it's so funny. This is about 2 minutes, but he does say that at the end, so we'll get to that part. But he's going to give Fauci a thorough
tongue bath?
Yeah, thorough tongue bath here.
Dr. Fauci, we owe you an apology for the way we have raked you through the mud, and none of us have said to you, here's where you go to get your good name and your reputation back. It's the most unfair thing I have seen. If there were evidence, if there were facts that supported the charges, I, like everybody else, would be interested, but we haven't seen a damn thing to suggest that these accusations are accurate. You've been a hero to many for 54 years, 5+ decades. You helped lead this country through the anthrax scare, through AIDS, through Zika, through Ebola, through SARS, and through COVID-19, pandemics and epidemics.
I got to pause it for a second. This guy here, if you're watching the video, this guy behind him on the right is like channeling my energy right now. Watch his face.
Collective, thank you. You are a world-renowned scientist and an American patriot. And whether or not
and he smirks there right at the end. Did you see that?
I did.
That little smirk.
I want to believe
so
that
good.
That's on them. But those facts are undisputable. For a year and a half, the Republican majority on this committee has sought to weaponize genuine scientific questions over COVID-19 and to vilify our public health officials and our nation's scientists with unsubstantiated, with baseless, with allegations that just can't stand the light of day. And so they've tried to do that with COVID-19, and we are here now as a result of the aggregated amount of foolishness that has taken place. And I've always said to this committee, every time I've had a chance to speak, let's go back to when we were in the heart of the pandemic, when our family members and friends and coworkers were dying left and right, when we were afraid to get near anybody, where we wanted to wash down our groceries before we brought them into the house, where we were willing to put on masks or headgear if it would keep us from being infected. And we turned to our leaders and our public health officials and scientists for answers. And we got some, but then we didn't get some. And then we got some later, like Dr. Deborah Birx, who was Donald Trump's expert on the virus, who said, no, bleach won't do it. Don't inject yourself with it. And who also said publicly on the record that thousands of American lives could have been spared if we had done what we were being told to do by the scientific community.
By the way, I guess I'm wrong on that. He alluded to the inject with bleach, but he said Birx shot it down. So he didn't come out and say that Donald Trump said that. But when you hear that from other people, challenge them.
Right.
Show me the clip.
Well, he's not directly saying Trump said inject bleach, but
That's what I just said.
He's alluding to it, though.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, I know. But
does your wife tell you don't listen?
She does not. I listen very well. Thank you very much.
So Trump never said it. He alluded to it and said Birx shot it down.
Right.
Joseph Goebbels, now you're young. You know that name, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The Nazi director of propaganda, and I made mention of this earlier, but he would have liked the Democrats' attempt to have a disinformation governance board under Homeland Security to establish the state line on things and stifle debate. That's what they tried to do. How many? And they're still doing it. You know, we see it on Facebook. If we put up anything that's inflammatory on Facebook on the podcast page, it slows down. Mm-hmm. And they're, you know, somebody is out there doing this sort of a thing. So it's something that we ought to be very concerned about. More of the full of shit awards. Let's start with what Trump actually said to Dr. Phil about revenge. Now, what Democrats have done is they've taken one little, maybe 2-second piece out of this clip. I thought, out of fairness, we ought to play the whole thing.
Yeah. This is 50 seconds.
I think you have so much to do, you don't have time to get even. You only have time to get right.
Well, revenge does take time, I will say that.
It does.
And sometimes revenge can be justified, Phil. I have to be honest. You know, sometimes it can.
But is the country better or worse for them going after you?
I think the country is really worse for what they've done. And I think you see that when you look at the poll numbers. When you see that almost $400 million has poured in since this horrible decision was made. That was a few days ago. Numbers that nobody's ever heard of in politics before. It's a great honor. The people of our country get it. You know, they're very smart. Taken as a whole, I have to say, they're very smart. But it's been an honor being with you. It really has. And I think you'd be very proud.
There you go.
Well, the part that I wanted on the clip was where he talked about the idea of putting Joe Biden through a trial after the election is unthinkable. He did say that on the Dr. Phil thing.
I missed that part, sorry.
So he did say it. So liberals, all they got out of that was Trump will seek revenge. I mean, across the spectrum with MSNBC, CNN, the New York Times and all that, their hair once again is on fire. But my very favorite one is my old friend Chris Matthews. And I mean, you know, you just can't. I mean, play the clip. I have no words.
Keep talking. There's an ad.
Okay. All right. He basically says that firing squads are coming back, that Trump will line up his enemies and he'll just start shooting them. I mean, really? The hyperbole involved in all that. That's just crazy. They're absolutely crazy. And because they're crazy, it gives us stuff that we can put on the podcast.
Yep. And we're talking for 5 more seconds while this ad finishes. Because we are not giving any free ads to
No
here.
free ads.
Oh, no. This video file cannot be played.
Oh, my gosh. They took it down. So you're going to have to take my word for it that he actually said this.
Oh, no.
What's going on here?
Well, I mean, there's many things to say. There's many things to say about this. I mean, I'm speaking for myself here, not necessarily for you, but I wish he would get revenge because these people have totally screwed him over. They cheated in the election. They've tried throwing him in jail. And I talked about it before. It's like it makes me look in hindsight and sarcastically, of course, say, well, thank God we didn't throw Hillary Clinton in jail for her crimes. Thank God we didn't throw Fauci in jail. You know, I mean, we talked about Fauci with the trial. How many trials has he been to? How many Senate hearings has he been to? Not trials, but Senate. How many congressional hearings has Fauci been to? He's lied. He's been caught lying under oath multiple times, and nothing's happened to him. He's totally fine. Nothing's going to happen. He's not going to jail. He's not going to lose his money. He already retired. He's still getting hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, if not more, and nothing's going to happen to the guy. So, yeah, it is time. We're back, okay? We're coming back. We're going to prosecute these people. They're prosecuting us for BS. We have plenty of legitimate things to prosecute them for, and we're going to start doing it. That's my opinion.
Okay, well, that's one way to look at it. The other way that Trump mentioned in the Dr. Phil interview was the best revenge is going to be fixing the country. Think about that for a second.
Right. But my point is, like, with all this lawfare and stuff, until they start feeling the effects of that on their side, they're not going to stop. It's going to continue.
Well,
They're going to do everything they can to throw a wrench in the system until they start realizing that, oh crap, this is coming after us too. Okay, I do actually have to.
You find it?
Yes.
I want to hear him say it.
Okay. I stalled for long enough with my ranting. Here we go.
This is the opposite of Donald Trump, who wants to put them before firing squads, basically. He wants to put them all in jail. He's unbelievable the way he talks about his opponents. And this is exactly the choice we have, a dictatorship or a democracy. We have to choose. This election is about more than abortion. It's about the whole question of what kind of government we're going to have. What kind of a country do we want to live in? Do we want a dictator who will tell the U.S. Congress, don't do anything about the border? Just don't do anything. Let it rock and roll. Let thousands come through between now and Election Day. It doesn't matter if they stay here forever, as long as we win the election.
See, he just did the same thing there, too. The sleight of hand with the border. He said that Trump is now the one that wants people to come in illegally so that he has something to campaign on. They're doing the narrative switch. They know exactly what they're doing.
Well, thank you for finding the clip, because people wouldn't have believed me if I said that Chris Matthews said he wants to put him before firing squads, and that's why we give him the Full of Shit award. And he's right about one thing. This election is going to determine which way we go, because if you think Trump would be a dictator, what do we have in the White House right now?
Yeah.
Right? You know, he's basically channeling Obama. I've got a pen and I got a phone, and I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do. Student loan forgiveness, court says I can't do it. Congress doesn't have a law. I'm going to do it anyway. He's doing anything he wants to do. And again, as far as the border goes, where was he the first 2 years after he invited all those people in and it became a crisis? Border's secure. You know, the state line was the border is secure. And, you know, if Joseph Goebbels, I'm sure he has a smile on his face down in hell when he's thinking about what's going on here. You know, the propagandists there in the White House have done an excellent job.
Yeah.
You know who else will do an excellent job? Michael Schroer. If you're ready for your new home, your first home, right? Maybe it's your forever home. Maybe you're downsizing. You need a real estate agent. First of all, he's on our team. Maybe you get a chance to meet him. I'm going to invite him to the June 25th event at Funhouse Pizza. Hopefully he'll show up for that. Would love to have him there because he's been working, finding people the right size home for 35 years in the Kansas City area, residential and commercial construction too. Maybe you got a piece of land and you want to build your dream home. You've got like the blueprints. You need somebody to help you with that. Michael Schroer will help you with that. You can find him on the phone at 816-783-5800. He's a real estate pro with RE/MAX Heritage. Get Michael Schroer on your team, and he'll put your best interests first. We are so proud to have him here on the podcast. All right, liberal versus liberal. And they say that, you know, when your enemies are fighting amongst themselves, just sit back on the bank and smile and watch them float right by, right?
Yep.
You don't want to get in their way. But this happened in Philadelphia. There was an anti-Israel protest that stopped the gay pride parade in Philadelphia. So it does seem like there's a civil war happening on the left. And as a backdrop to that, warnings have been issued for pride events in New York City. Who might attack them? Could come from a couple of places. Could come from pro-Hamas protesters from our nation's universities. Could be jihadists who have walked across our southern border. Could be a lot of problems going on here. It's a lovely picture you got there.
Let's watch.
Love the hair. Oh, it's feathers. Ooh, that's politically incorrect. Some of them have their masks on. That's good.
Bozos versus bozos. That's what I call. That's what I put in the notes.
Aren't they all leftists? And again, we really don't have a dog in this fight. Just sit back and watch it happening. Kind of reminds me of what happened Saturday night in Kansas City because the Freddie Phelps Goon Squad was across the street from the Tim McGraw concert. The Freddie Phelps Goon Squad basically goes everywhere. You know, the what is it, the Westboro Baptist Church guys. And Freddie died, but they're still out there protesting basically everything. A couple of artists who have like taken them to task, and I was on scene for, Brad Paisley just shredded them at one concert, and Vince Gill, he came out once when he was in town to do a concert. He said, "Any of you all Phelpses, or did we get the C team here?" There it is. So we had some guys, because I guess the Kansas City Pride Parade was on Saturday, and so they had some pride flags, and I told the guy on the right, "Hold that thing up there, I'm going to take a picture of you," right there in front of the Freddie Phelps guys.
There you have it.
So I don't know where all that's going to go, but it does beg the question, if there's a pride event that's under siege, who's it under siege from? And it's not from the folks on the right. I think by and large, we're like live and let live, do whatever you want to do as long as it doesn't hurt me. It's the left versus the left, or as Kurt said, bozos versus bozos. Pro-Palestinian protesters encircled the White House over the weekend. Poor Joey. He's caught between the left and center of his own party. He tells Time magazine, I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, that he believes Netanyahu is keeping this war going for political purposes, at the same time tying Netanyahu's hands from effectively dealing with the threat that Israel faces. It is tough to have it both ways, Joe.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't even know about this until you put it in the notes and I found the clip. I mean, just imagine if this was like pro-Trump, protesters or Proud Boys or something like that. I mean, we would never hear the end of it. It'd be another, Charlottesville rally, January 6th, blah, blah, blah. And these things happen all the time. We see people breaking into government buildings, breaking into state houses, breaking into state congressional hearings, breaking in, they did it with the Supreme Court justices, breaking into those hearings. And there's just the double standard obviously is very blatant, but it's worth repeating.
And women and gays who support the Palestinians, let's just say that let's just take them at their word that they're supporting the Palestinians, the poor Palestinians who are being hurt by Israel and their aggression into Gaza, and it has nothing to do with Hamas. Palestinians, on a base level, if you're a woman supporting Palestine or any of the Islamic countries, what are you thinking? They want to take your rights back to the 5th century. You think Trump's a misogynist? I mean, they want to literally take your rights back to the 5th century. And homosexuals, good luck to you. They'd drop you off a really tall building. I don't get that. Does that make any sense to you at all? Why people would go against their interests to protest?
No, it's LARPing is what it is.
What's LARPing? I don't know.
Live action role playing.
Okay.
It comes from those guys that dress up like medieval knights with the plastic swords and like go to the park.
I know. Renaissance Fest types.
Do magic and stuff like that. But what it is, I think, is it's a continuation of the oppressor-oppressed mindset that they have in America. It's what Black Lives Matter is. It's why it's the same people as Black Lives Matter. It is a little bit different, and I have my own personal opinion. I'm not pro-Israel like you are, but that's a whole different conversation. But the movement is an extension of that. They see Israel as white oppressors, and they see Palestinians as brown oppressed. It's anti-white, it's anti-colonial, and that's really what it boils down to. So they don't either know about the policies, how they treat women and gays and stuff in these countries, or they do know and they just don't care because the overarching narrative is that, Israel is the white colonial Western oppressive country, and that's what they're going to latch onto. That's why they buy, the headscarves and everything like that, that they just got off of Amazon.com 2 days ago. Still has the creases in it. That's why they buy the Palestinian flag and all that.
Well, they should go over there and protest. See how that works out.
Yeah.
For both women and gays. See how well your rights are protected in an Islamic country. And that's not even an Islamic country. It's an area of Israel that's still in dispute. So crazy times over there. But when you protest against your interest, LARPing or whatever you want to call it, it's just crazy.
There you go. You learned a new term today.
I did. I'm going to go look it up. We want to thank Bob Watson. Again, I'm going to reach out to Bob. Hopefully he'll be there June 25th as well at Funhouse Pizza. He'd love to talk to you about your insurance deal. Insurance, just like everything else with inflation, is going up and up and up. Let Bob and his team find a way to bundle everything and actually save you money in these inflationary times. 816-229-7878. He's at 7th and Main in Blue Springs. Auto, home, life, commercial insurance, your pontoon boats, your pets. He can tie you into pet insurance. Trust me, that's an area that's growing. Let Bob Watson look at your insurance needs and get you going down the right path. 7th and Main in Blue Springs, 816-229-7878.
Tremendous people.
I'm going to leave you with this, and usually we like to leave you with something fun. This is not fun. This made my blood boil on Friday when I saw this. In Connecticut, you had Trooper Aaron Pelletier. He was killed when a drug and alcohol-infused driver sideswiped his cruiser in Southington, Connecticut. I lived right down the road from Southington, Connecticut when I lived there. He was just 34 years old, left behind a wife, 2 small children, and his canine officer, Rosso, who will end up staying with the family. Now, Tunnel to Towers is one of those charities that I love. They're going to pay off their house. That's the good news story that comes out of this for Pelletier's family that he leaves behind. But then there's this. Wethersfield, Connecticut, which is one of the many towns in the state of Connecticut, it started as a good thing. They wanted to honor this trooper, right? And the thought was out there that let's honor him by flying the thin blue line flag at half-staff. I'm not sure what the clip you're going to play. Do I need to go through the whole story before you play the clip?
We can play it first and then talk about it. There's a couple different things going on here. So
okay, well, think about this. The object here is to honor this trooper. Find out how the debate that happened, the ridiculousness of the left in how this story went from something nice that you should do for the family of the trooper and those folks who keep us safe on the home front everywhere, and it became a political mess.
Great respect for our law enforcement community, and I realize the dangerous job that they do every day. Out of respect for the tragic death of State Trooper First Class Aaron Pelletier, we won't be raising the pride flag today. It's already up on the pole at half-staff in honor of his passing.
Okay, so that's the first thing.
All right, so
there's another thing later.
They used the pride flag because I guess the thin blue line flag that has represented police for a very long time, there's also a thin red line flag that represents firefighters. So the compromise for these clowns was, well, we don't want that because that's too divisive. Yeah. So we're going to raise the pride flag because that's not divisive at all.
Here's the clip at the end of this clip is one of the council women speaking about the thin blue line flag.
I mean to you.
Represent racism and antagonism to many, many people. And even if you don't personally believe that and you fly it at your own house and you think it means something to you that's much more positive, it's just not how many people feel about it. It's not appropriate to raise over our town hall, especially when our flag policy prohibits us from doing anything associated with hate.
Okay. Yeah, chew on that for a minute. Chew on that for a week, and let's talk about it again next week. You know, the compromise to me would have been, how about the American flag?
Right.
Fly that at half-staff.
I agree, man. I don't think we need to fly the thin blue line flag, the thin red line flag, or whatever. I mean, you know, you're not supposed to do that anyways, right? You're supposed to fly the American flag. Those other flags, if you really look into like the flag code, you know, you're not supposed to do that with the flag.
Yeah.
Change the colors and things like that. But
so the compromise was we're going to raise the pride flag at half-staff.
Yeah. Well, the beginning of the clip, she tried to justify it by she didn't mention that, it's racist to fly the thin blue line flag. She's like, well, the pride flag's already up, you know, it's already gay month, so let's just fly it at half-staff, you know, for the fallen gay police officer.
Well, our thoughts and prayers go out to the officer's family and the canine who will remain with them. And knowing that Tunnel to Towers stepped in, there's still going to be a huge void in that family. Our prayers are definitely with them. And until next week, as we get closer to our live event, circle the calendar, June 25th, Funhouse Pizza in Lee Summit. Can't wait to see you. Senator Bill Eigel is going to be there. He's running for governor of Missouri. Bring your questions, bring your appetite for pizza, because we're going to have a fun time. Until next week, this is Dale Carter's America.
The views expressed on Dale Carter's America are Dale's and Kurt Wheeler's. They do not necessarily reflect the views of KFKF or Steel City Media. Comments can be sent to dalecartersamerica@gmail.com. Check back for weekly episodes. Subscribe, spread the word, and give us a 5-star review. Thanks for being a part of Dale Carter's America.